on an added secretary or other things of that nature. What I can tell you today is that there is a secretary in the business office, a confidential secretary, not part of the support staff union, that serves for me and the facilities director, processes all of our bills in the business office and for the facilities department. The custodial staff is on both first and second shift. So we do have a confidential staff person, again, not part of the union, that works on second shift or sometimes a split shift, but has coverage over second shift so that she can supervise those staff members. So we only have, it's not an administrative role, it's a confidential role that is outside of the support union. I say it is a supervisory role, but it's not an Act 93 role, put it that way.
So she's not a custodian then?
She does fill in and clean in needed times. So when there's absences and other needs where we don't have coverage, can't get substitutes or whatever it may be, she may have to and does fulfill cleaning duties.
Okay, then I guess my next question is, how's her salary? I mean, is it based on
It's hourly.
being a custodian?
It's hourly. It's an hourly rate.
Okay. And basically the same as custodial rate?
It's not on the custodial scale.
Did you
No.
say she was confidential?
Yes. It's not part of the support staff
Okay.
matrix.
Yes, you did that. Okay. So we do need this person.
I would say she's an integral part of our operation, in my opinion.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll jump in then. Just to get the ball rolling on some conversation as we go forward with this, I will just be perfectly blunt and put it out there in the public at this point that I would support scenario number 2 in the budget presentation that we saw on Tuesday night. Excuse me. I find this incredibly difficult. It's the worst budget I've ever had to go through since I've been serving on the board and what I've had to see, but we are never ever facing anything like this in our past, and no other school district is facing something like this. No other school district in this county has lost a township from their revenue base and is experiencing what we're experiencing. I hate to see these cuts, but unless we're willing to really raise taxes, we have to make the cuts. And I cannot, for the community, put a huge tax increase on them, but we're going to have to raise revenue, to Mr. Deschaux' point. Going through that, I had a few comments that I wanted to make related to those cuts. It's painful for us to lose any positions, in any program, but it's better than losing the whole program. We talk about the mental health of our children in this community, the mental health of our students in these buildings. What would this do to their mental health if we said, you don't have music anymore, you don't have athletics anymore, you don't have whatever anymore? That's the stuff that gets the kids coming to school, wanting to be in school. That's where they build their relationships. That's what they get good grades for, so they can continue to participate. So you talk about mental health, that's one thing related to that. There's also no reason to say we cannot bring some of this back. Every year we have a budget presentation for us. Every year that I've sat on this board, we have a budget presentation that says we're going to have a deficit. And in the end, sometimes we've had a surplus, or we discover additional revenue coming in or fewer expenses than we thought. There's grant opportunities. So, as we go through this coming year, there might be opportunities to say, hey, as Mrs. Meese stumbled onto the SRO grant information, maybe there's stuff out there that we could bring back an SRO at some point. But we have the here and now, and we have to get to a budget here and now so that we can deal with that. So, we can look at this stuff as we go forward and hopefully bring some of this back. I also don't want us to make rash decisions right now that have a long-term detrimental effect to this district. There's a lot of emotion around this. Mr. Deschaux and Mrs. Brenton have the children here. My daughter just graduated last year. We cannot make quick decisions now that will destroy this district in the future. Because I'll tell you what, if we have a district that people don't want to live in, as Mr. Deschaux said, guess what's going to happen to your property values in this district? Your house is going to go way down in value, any land you own is going to go way down in value, and then guess what's going to happen with your tax bill at that point? So we want people to be coming here, so we cannot make those rash decisions. Some of this stuff that we talked about, is sort of, to me, the next step as we look forward to the operations of the district going forward. Dr. Cartwright's new to the district, so after we can get all this settled and the dust settled with this, we as a board then have to sit down with her and start to establish some goals for her going forward. To say, maybe we look at our relationship with tech, and do we continue that relationship as it is now, or do we have to make changes there programmatically? What do we want to do? That should all be part of our discussions with Dr. Cartwright going forward for her leadership and her goals at this point. So I'm just putting it out there for everybody else to know publicly that I would support scenario number 2 that includes the presentation as we've seen it with the 2.5% increase, which equates to $6 a month for the average taxpayer. I think $6 a month for the average taxpayer is not a lot to ask when you're able to save a lot of stuff for the children of this community and the programs that we're talking about here. That also utilizes about $1.8 million, a little over $1.8 million of our fund balance. We can consider ourselves lucky that we have that fund to be able to do that. And I forget your chart, I think, where was your chart, Mr. Ulmer, that with the 2.5%, it sort of gets us back to where we need to be in, was it 2 years from now?
Oh, 2 years from now. Yeah, if you go to the presentation that was on the 15th, the 2.5% would be on page 16 and 17, page 16 specifically. That shows a 2.5% increase in gray, and that would get the district back to the level of funding we were at in 2021, the amount of revenue that we had in 2021, we would be back up to by fiscal year 23-24 with a 2.5% increase over the next 2 years. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So that's where I stand. Anybody else feel free to chime in at this point? Go ahead, Mrs. Meese.
You said about $6 a month for the average person. Can you run down how you calculated that?
And that's in the chart from Mr. Ulmer. He can go back to that maybe.
On
Is that based on like the 100?
Yeah, on page of tonight's presentation, or of Tuesday's presentation, it's on page 10. There, thank you. So this is the average. So a 2.5% tax increase would yield a $72 increase in their tax bill for this year, and that's on the average assessed value of $121,000.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? We're coming up on 7 o'clock.
I'd like to share. I understand the position that you guys are taking, feeling the need to raise taxes. I just want to say that I'm sorry if there's been a feeling of hostility coming from the new perspectives that we're bringing. It's not my intention to be hostile with my ideas and my thoughts, but they are different, and I recognize that they are different. But a few weeks ago, I started looking at this scenario with our district that it felt very familiar to me, going back 18 years ago when I first became a new mom, and my husband was the breadwinner, and we had a house to pay for and bills, and we decided I was going to stay home, and we pinched pennies, and it was hard. We took hand-me-downs. We didn't decorate the house for many years. We paid off our debts. We did what we knew was the right thing to do. We just lived with what we needed to live with. If we had to pay other people out of the business, we paid them first. We didn't pay ourselves. We put priorities in place, and through that, we gained wisdom, we gained understanding, more business came, and over time, you know, we've been blessed with that process because we focused on what was important at the time, and our kids didn't know any better. Our kids didn't realize that we were living, you know, subpar or whatever you want to call it. We didn't make materialism an important thing. We didn't make things an important thing. We didn't put anything above just living smart. And I see our district right now in that position. I feel like we're at a time where we need to pinch pennies, but not compromise on the things that matter, which I think is education, the kids' education. And so, you know, I'm not trying to take an offensive position against anybody who has an administrative position, but I don't want to pick administration or heads or leads over top of, you know, programs and whatnot that, you know, that position is more important because we want, say, long-term stability or something like that in a job. We're in a situation we've never been in before. We're a district that doesn't have the things a lot of other districts have now. We have a very unique situation, and so we have to make the you know, unusual decisions that are very unpopular. But I'm not willing to compromise the kids' education. But I do think that we can reevaluate everything. You know, maybe there's been a time where we overlooked decisions and things happening that we just didn't really need, or, you know, we just kind of let things go because there was no need to really look at it closely, you know. And as far as property values, if we raise taxes on our community to a point where they can't afford their homes, they go into foreclosure. And foreclosure homes get bought at a very, very low price, which drives down the market value of all the homes around it. So there's all kinds of effects that could happen from raising taxes versus not raising taxes. So it's not one or the other. There's many scenarios here to consider. And I just want us to work together to pick what's most important right now to stick with. I don't know why we feel rushed to make every cut and balance the budget right now. I understand things compound over time, but I think everything can just kind of calm down and slow down, and we be wise in how we approach this. Yeah, I don't want to make any decisions that will be detrimental to the future of our children, of the district. So why don't we just do some things now, evaluate it, you know, throughout the next coming school year, and then see where we need to go from there, and then adjust. But right now, our economy is not good. And if we come in taxing, we're just like Hoover. You know, Hoover taxes all over the place, and people are going to lose their homes. It's going to be Great Depression in Dover. That's just what I see. So I'm sorry if there's a feeling of hostility. It's just different perspective. Really, I think that it's challenging. We're all challenging each other to think and keep thinking and find the best solutions. Thanks.
Anybody else?
We have time.
Go ahead.
Carmen and I went to a planning commission meeting last week, and I was surprised at the level of contention there seemed to be between that committee or that commission and how they viewed the school board. They didn't even know how much it cost to send a student to school in Dover. And I think that we're going to continue to have this issue with the budget come in a cyclical way, probably, if we don't start communicating with the other community, the other entities of the community. Yeah. So I'm going to try to make it a personal, like, mission in a sense to go to those meetings a little bit more and just kind of listen. I don't think that all of the boards or committees up there are that way, because I know Carmen went to another one, and the Board of Supervisors, and she was very well received there. But this particular panel of people, not so much. There were a couple. So that concerns me, because they're planning our community. And if they're not seeing how some of these developments are gonna hurt us more, maybe not, I don't know, but we just need to make sure everybody's communicating and everybody's on the same page with development, because I love this the one chart. I'm gonna take that to one of the meetings where it shows that we don't have a lot of commercial industry in Dover, and that's really hurting us. So I know that they're trying, and there's just not been a lot of interest. Because of the 74 corridor, we don't have a lot of, infrastructure, maybe like sewer and so forth, to expand commercially. But I think that, us school board members and administration is left holding the bag on what's happening with the development. So, so I think that partnership over the next several years, it's going to take time, but maybe if we foster that a little bit more, maybe. Maybe we can eliminate this from happening in the future too. So I know it puts a lot of stress on you guys. So I appreciate you going through all of this and being new to our district. And I know that you're very well intentioned, and it's been a difficult situation that you've been put in. So I know it's tough, and I appreciate your due diligence with trying to help us with this. So thank you for that.
I have one more question. The fund balance, Matt. Can you just kind of walk us through, where do we get money? If we're going to take a big chunk of that, I kind of just want to get a better idea, the lay of the land of what that includes, and how, if we use this money, how would we eventually, hopefully, replace that revenue that we used, et cetera?
Fund balance is one-time money. It was one-time saved money, if you want to use the word saved, or a better word would be like retained earnings. So in years prior, you had revenues that exceeded your expenditures. So you were able to put money at the end of that fiscal year towards certain specific things in the future, or it was put into an unassigned bucket or an unassigned fund. You then have that money available, especially the unassigned monies, to put towards the next year's budget, the following year's budget, and utilize that. So when we see the three items that are up there, continued reduction of expenditures, utilization of fund balance, and local tax increases, the only way you can increase your fund balance again is if you get to a point where your revenues exceed your expenses in a given fiscal year. So we have had historical presentations that had a deficit, and it didn't always end in a deficit as far as the actual end of fiscal year. Last year, we ended the year with a $2.4 million deficit. That was the final actual loss. So we utilized money out of fund balance. Essentially, we used $2.4 million out of fund balance to make us zero. We projected in this 21-22 school year to be at $2.5 million deficit. So as we have indicated on slide 9 on Tuesday night's presentation, we're sitting right around it to $16 million. So if we do lose, right now we're projecting, I think, to be right above $2 million of a deficit for this year. We went in budgetarily at 2.5. We're right around 2 now. Let's just say that holds. We'll be down to $14 million in fund balance. If we continue that cycle, we're going to not have fund balance to go to and utilize in balancing the budget. There are certain committed funds that we have, such as the balance that's at the Lincoln Benefit Trust, that we have to have there to pay our claims. There's a requirement on that amount of fund balance that is there to pay our claims, our health insurance. But yeah, so that's the very top non-spendable. The other committed funds we have set aside for different items. So there's debt service principal that has been set aside. There's other retirement fund pension items that have been set aside. So we can utilize some of those funds in balancing the budget, but there's certain buckets that we can't.
Anybody else? Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn the committee meeting then. Let's take a 5-minute break so we can all reset our agendas on our computers, and if anybody needs to step out of the room for a minute, let's take 5 minutes and come back then. If you would please rise for the.
Good evening, everyone, and first of all, thank you for providing us the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Quite honestly, following the last meeting, I know it's a tough one. Like, as you're looking into a budget, trying to make everything work for a school district, I know that is a huge task, a huge chore, and quite frankly, I was stressed just sitting here because I do understand that you all want what's best for the kids. We obviously want that as well. So I do thank you for your time with that. As was shared there, my name is Devin Moyer. I am a parent in the district, and actually I guess I'm supposed to say 521 East Circle Drive on Dover Township. But tonight I am here representing not just one sport, but the Dover youth sports in general, and just really trying to work towards a greater collaboration with the school district to make sure that we're honestly offering the most we can to our students. Following that last meeting, the other good news I want to share is what I'm here to talk about tonight isn't a budget item. Like, there is no expense to what I'm going to present tonight. It really is just about working together as a cohesive group. So it's not the school versus the community, it's the school as part of the community and everyone working together. So again, I do thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I do come as a slightly interesting role as well. I am a parent of 3 Dover students. I have a high school senior, Emily, an 8th grader, Drew, and a 5th grader, Ty, who all are heavily involved in activities. But I'm also a school principal with Northeastern School District. So while I definitely see the parent side of things, I've been a school administrator for the past 18 years as well. That I know how the school operates as well. So I do understand the challenges sometimes of the school and the community working together. So what I really would like to talk about tonight is, again, how I think the school and the community can best work together. We do have a number of organizations here with me tonight. Soccer is represented, Dover Youth Soccer, basketball is here, lacrosse is here, the township is here. We started working with the township and just trying to work better as a group together to make sure that the youth sports are working in collaboration with one another and not working in competition with one another as well. Swimming's here, baseball's here, boosters here, and I have talked to Dr. Wiesling about some of our goals and aspirations as well. Before I go into too much of where we're shooting for as an organization, I do want to just kind of back up and think of the history of education in general. When the schools started in the 1830s as public education, the goal really was to produce better citizens. Like, they were derived at educating kids, hoping that we produce better citizens. At the time, things were really focused on reading, math, civics, and government in general, and trying to make those better citizens. Now, if you think about schools today, it's become a lot more complex. We obviously have all those subjects being offered, but on top of that now, we've added social-emotional learning. We've offered a ton of different things with MTSS, the frameworks of supporting kids, and then we've also built in those parts of community sports and sports at school as well. And I think we all do that with that same role yet of producing quality citizens. We have just come to a much broader definition of what it takes to produce quality people in society. But anybody around the table here who's been involved in sports, or anybody behind me who's been involved in sports, knows as well that that is definitely a learning experience. Like, it is an outside of the classroom learning experience, but it does develop leaders, it develops teamwork, and that is what a lot of our businesses, local businesses, are looking for, is those skills as well. So it's not always about having that academic skill, it's also having those soft skills and having those social skills, which I do believe athletics provides to our students. So the reason I share this whole history is one of the things that becomes very unique about schools is schools are one of the very few places that everybody has to go. You think about it, every kid has to go to school. And that makes, I'm going to say, schools a very unique place when it comes around to communication. As the organizations are trying to get in touch with kids and so on, we have to kind of hope that we touch base with them over social media. They drive by, see one of our yard signs or something like that. But schools have the very unique piece of being able to communicate with every single family in the community. And that's often why schools are referred to as the hub of the community. And I think that's where schools and the community really have to get better at working together. So rather than the community trying to figure out a way to communicate their information, schools communicating just that school stuff. I think if the more we work in collaboration, really the better we can serve our kids, especially when we're trying to serve a lot of the same things. We have the same goals in mind. So my personal opinion of where schools fall in youth activities, we know, first of all, there's countless research studies out there that involved kids tend to do better in school. And that's one of those, I could come here with a study to show you, but I can also say, go and Google it. Like, I mean, you will find study after study saying involved kids are successful kids. The more involved kids are at school, the more successful they are at school. We also know that curiosity starts at a young age for kids. So we want to make sure that our kids are getting involved in activities as early as we possibly can. And needless to say, as those kids are getting involved early, it's going to benefit the schools as well, because again, they've gotten that involvement, they've gained that interest and so on. So schools can selfishly look at this and say, the more involved kids are in the community, the more successful they're going to be for us as well. And I'm going to say from the viewpoint of Dr. Wiesling, the more the kids are involved early on in sports and youth sports and things like that, the more successful our high school teams are going to be as well, as our youth programs are successful also. One of our team members with our association, Scott Miller, did an analysis of Dover sports in the fall. And while my kids have had awesome experiences with Dover sports, we don't always have the most winning records. And I don't want to say that winning's everything, because it's not. But in the fall, we had under a 20% win rate for our students. And sometimes, I'm going to say, when you get that beat over and over and over, the games aren't close, that's discouraging as well. You don't feel as good about being on a team that's not finding as high levels of success. So I think one of the ways that we can boost that success is, again, by having our youth programs be more successful. This is where I'm going to say my own background comes into fruition here as well. One of the things that Northeastern has done a really nice job of, still they can do better, but they've done a nice job of, is working as part of that community hub. And one of the things that we do at Northeastern is we distribute community flyers. As I talk about distributing community flyers, that's the sign up for youth sports. That is letting folks know some of those different programs that are taking place. Now, to back up on the piece where I said about there is no expenses to the school in this, the schools at Northeastern, we don't photocopy stuff for people. We don't count stuff for people or anything like that. The community is responsible for doing all that stuff before it ever comes into the school walls, but we do help to disseminate that information. Using myself as an example at Dover, we found out about soccer signups by accident when my son was old enough to play. It just so happened that all of a sudden his friend was going out for soccer and said, hey, we have tryouts today and I want to play too. We hurried up and tried to track down that information. But to think again, had the school been willing to distribute that flyer, it would have made that information available out there for all kids to make sure that they knew that that was happening, because again, all kids are going to the school for that program. So it was probably about 15 years ago we started this at Northeastern. There definitely was skepticism at the time of what could go wrong, what might not work. I was part of that planning team. Like I said, I've been an administrator for them for 18 years. I was part of that planning team sitting there saying what could work, what might not work, and we wrote up guidelines, and quite frankly, what we found is we didn't run into any problems. Like, we truly did not run into problems. We were worried about bulk of flyers and stuff, and what it ends up being is usually 2 to 3 flyers a month that we end up sending home, but it still makes a big difference in communicating that information out for the local organizations. I did include tonight, and I hope you all got copies that they get included in the agenda, my paperwork. Did my handouts
That was
get in?
previously sent via email, yep.
Just making sure that that was included in there. I made up a sample of what community flyer guidelines could look like. Quite frankly, I look at this as one of those of why recreate the wheel. While we have a neighboring district that's doing it successfully, I mean, I'm not going to ask you to trust me just as a parent. I'd reach out to my boss, Stacy Seidel. She would tell you as well that it is working very successfully and communicating that information out that all parties are benefiting. The kids are benefiting most importantly, but the school is also benefiting as we see kids being informed of what's going on or taking place in the community. So again, we've come together as groups within the community now. We're trying to make it that Our sports teams are kind of competing less with each other and working together to make sure that we're providing the best opportunities for our students. But ultimately, if we can have the collaboration with the school, that makes it all the better. Because again, you all have access to the kids and getting that information out. And if we could have that collaboration with you, I really do believe it would be a beautiful thing for our community. So I tried to breeze through here because I know I only had 10 minutes, and I think I'm right there at that 10-minute mark. I also know that this is time for me to talk and not time for me to have that discussion with you. I am passionate about it. I'm willing to do my part. I know the other organizations are willing to do their part as well. I ask, if you do have questions, don't hesitate to come up to me, ask me afterwards. Again, I've worked for a place that's done it successfully for a number of years. I hope Dover can follow suit, and we can do the same type of thing for our kids here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Okay, this brings us to our first public comment period. This is a 30-minute period for items on or off of the agenda. There will be a limit of 3 minutes per speaker, so if you have a comment that you would like to make, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Craig Kindig, Willapa Drive. Interesting budget meeting. Interesting comments made. Yeah, I'm retired, but my grandchildren attend this school, so yes, I have a stake in this school. Paid taxes to the school district for almost 50 years. I have a stake in this school. I do want good education. I support education. High school graduate, decided to go to college at the age of 39. I respect education. I realize the importance of it. But I also have a perception that there's a lot of rubber stamping going on by this board. Why do we have this deficit? Parents came to you, taxpayers came to you and said, do not close that elementary school. The board ignored them. The administration ignored them. Now we've got this big deficit we've got to deal with. We have to look at where we're spending our money. I think we have too many administrators. I asked for the list of administrators. I got them after I wrote up the request to know or whatever it was. We need to take a look at this, folks. We can't keep on raising taxes, especially when the taxpayers were the ones that said, board, don't do that, and you did it. My understanding is we built a brand new high school, and we've had issues lately of restrooms being vandalized to the point where we closed the restrooms. Who is running these schools? One principal, two assistant principals, superintendent, assistant superintendent, CFO, and we've got to close down restrooms because kids are vandalizing them? Our tax money, my tax money, your tax money, your tax money, paid for a brand new school, and we've got kids destroying it. So we've got a lot of work to do, folks. I asked a question some time ago when we started talking about the budget. I still haven't gotten a response. We've got a credit union that is operating in the high school building and is not paying 1 red cent of property tax or anything else to help this district. I'm sorry, as a taxpayer, that is wrong and that should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kindig. Anybody else? Okay, seeing nobody moving, I'll move on to Board President's communication. We did have a committee of the whole meeting prior to this meeting to discuss the budget. There were many questions asked since our Tuesday night meeting, so we had our administrative team respond to those questions, so we had additional information to continue that process moving forward. And then we had some discussions after that presentation. So with that, we will go right to our human and fiscal resources category. We do have a motion tonight that we have to address for modular classrooms. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to deem 3 modular classrooms as obsolete.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Ulmer, could you just refresh us on this? I know it was mentioned Tuesday night, but it involves, I think, 2 buildings? High
Yes,
school
we
and
have,
Lib.
we have 2 modular units at the middle school that we would like to be able to remove and/or have outside parties buy, should the interest arise, and we have the same situation at Lib. We have a modular classroom at Lib that is not, at both locations, they're no longer being used. So if we have interested parties, we'd like to be able to get them removed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion from the board? Hearing none, Mrs. Alman?
Your voice vote, Mr. Wolverton?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other miscellaneous comments or observations from our board members tonight?
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Moyer. Is it Mr., Doctor? Mr.? Okay. Thank you very much for all of your efforts and all of you who are sports in our community. I'm super excited about the potential partnership. I know personally, I've got 2 soccer players that found out about soccer the same way by accident. So this is something that I think our community and sports community really needs. And just thank you all for your work.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree. I second what Amy said, and I think it's so important that we support the local youth organizations just because those are the same families and kids that are in our district. But also, I did notice on our district website a few weeks ago, I was searching around, and under the tab community, I saw Dover Diamond Sports listed there, and I wasn't sure, do we have a policy to have sport organizations be able to be listed under that tab community? And if you don't know for sure right now, we could come back to it maybe with an answer.
We have policy 913, which addresses the distribution of flyers. And we do have the community page that we post community organizations' contact information.
Contact, okay.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, hearing none, this brings us to our last public comment period. It's again a 30-minute period for items on or off the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Anybody interested in speaking? Okay, hearing none, we move on to our future meeting announcements. We do have our regular board meeting on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022 at 7:00 p.m. in this room. So if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.